lies in the Vaseline. Sometimes it blows my mind, but we keep getting stuck, and hopefully we will be getting out as we do our third episode of Gen X Wasteland. And I'm very excited for this show. I'm very excited to see you here if you're live or if you're listening on any podcast provider. Now it's available on iTunes, Spotify, and your usual podcast suspects, if you would. And I'm trying to get my range down here as I try to be more like Johnny Fever and WKRP Cincinnati or Vincent Bugliosi in talk radio. Very cool movie. I don't know if people are familiar with it. Oliver Stone directed it, but it's an intense movie about a DJ who things don't end up well because he keeps running his mouth on the show. But anyway, I am your host, Miguel Connor, and this is the first show that is exclusively being streamed from my YouTube channel, separating from Aeon Byte, and it is just here. So make sure you like, subscribe, tell all your friends that this is where Gen X Wasteland will be. Again, you can find it on all your podcast providers. Just type up Gen X Wasteland or Miguel Connor or something like that, and we shall get it to you. So very cool today. Very happy to have Dr. Sherilyn Jones coming back. Hey, Sherilyn, how are you?
Hey, Miguel, how are you doing? I'm so excited to learn more about Elvis, all the things I didn't know.
Indeed. Yes, there's so much. And it seems there's much more than in the book. In the book, I do provide a chart from Elvis that my friend Maja Daoud did. But I really didn't go much into the astrology. It's not my field. Working on this David Bowie book, I am going deeper because as we were talking, David Bowie and Elvis were both born on January 8th. They're 12 years apart. And again, Roy Batty was created in the movie Blade Runner on January 8th. And there's all these weird things with Elvis and Bowie and Philip K. Dick that we will eventually get into. But I am going deeper, and this is a show that's very important that we go find out what the stars had to say about Elvis. The stars are looking very different today, as David Bowie sang. So with us, very excited to have Noah Campbell. Noah, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. And I'm so thankful you had me on because I have to apologize first that I tried to get you canceled for not releasing the Elvis book early enough. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize all I had to do was a couple dozen hours of research into the astrology and you'd send me a galley. I didn't realize. Okay.
Yes, the media is a funny land and promotions is a funny, and I'm learning too. I mean, I've been published with smaller publishers, but the sort of mass media thing and how it's played is still new to me, and I'm glad it's inner traditions because they're just. We'll get there, and we're still waiting on Ray. Hopefully, he got my email. Again, it's been kind of crazy because I've been appearing in so many podcasts to promote Elvis. I'm getting Aeon Byte and Gen X Wasteland mixed up. So again, that's a good thing to keep it separated. So, and for everybody in the audience right now, until Ray shows up with the phone number, we'll probably have to do it in the chat room. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and Sherilyn or I will get to them. So, well, before we get started, Noah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who art thou? I know you're a secret sonner like Sherilyn and I, but who are you?
I am a resident of the north, the far north, and I grew up in a family of of hippies who became Reformed Christians, but kept their friends in their life. And so I had a prominent astrologer, Robin Armstrong, was a friend of my parents. And so he was allowed sometimes to say certain things, and certain things were banned. But later in life, that got activated. And so I took his course and graduated his course in astrology. It became a sort of a midlife obsession of mine.
Very cool. Very cool. So awesome. Well, why don't we get started? Let's not waste any more time. and get into the charts. We've been chatting about it. Do you want me to pull up the charts and the graphics that you sent me?
Yeah,
Thing you-
we'll start with one thing, which is, what do we know about eclipses? What do they portend? Do you guys know?
Saves
Oh, you didn't know this was a test. It's
Big
a test.
changes. things getting revealed.
Yeah, for sure. But also within traditional astrology and modern astrology, eclipses portend the birth and death of kings.
Mm.
And you can study that historically. It's real. And so if we look at 3 days before Elvis was born, so midnight of January 4th, moving into the 5th, there was what seems to be the final eclipse in the Old North 9 Saros series. Now, the Saros series is a sort of an interference pattern of looking at eclipse cycles over 18-year cycles. Okay?
Mhm.
And NASA says there wasn't an eclipse that day, but Bernadette Brady says there was. And I looked at different sources. And so I sent you an image from Stellarium. I went and dug it up. I mean, it's an app. Hey. But if you want to put that up.
Sure. Let's see. Where art thou? All right. Let's go here. All right.
There it is. 3 days before Elvis was born, the moon took a tiny little bite out of the sun within the sign of Sagittarius, which is a double-bodied sign, which we'll get into. And you can see there that Mercury and Venus were very close, as it is in Elvis's natal chart. It's a big pile up there. Now, that's in the constellation of Sagittarius, but actually within the tropical sign of Capricorn because of the precessional drift, okay? Now, what's interesting is, and this is foreshadowing for later on, is that while I was angry about Miguel not releasing his book, there was a very, very important reason. And can you confirm there was no astrologer involved in releasing your book, the date?
No, it was 100% a business deal. I know everybody in the Inner Tradition staff, they drink the Kool-Aid or eat the dog food. They are esotericists, but it's really done professionally. And people have, like, I went on this podcast, The Whole Rabbit, and they were telling me April 8th is a big Thelema date. I forget what is when the Aeon or Crowley summons something. So, but you tell me what else does it mean, Noah?
Oh, we're gonna save it till the end. We'll save it till the end. But what I do want to say is that the eclipse that happened just a few days ago was part of that same series, except it's the new 9 North series. So there's like a series that goes out, and another eclipse series comes in that moves through these signs in this predictable pattern. So very interesting that this book is released within the continuation of that same Saros series. But really, it's like the last eclipse of a whole series. So it's almost like the end of an old order and the beginning of a new one.
Isn't that what everybody's saying? Was it Neptune is going in Aries or something like that?
Yes, indeed.
Things are falling apart. The center cannot hold, as Yeats sang, and what will be revealed, and what will be exposed will soon be exposed.
We'll see. 2 days ago, Neptune, I wanted to ask you guys if you're feeling it. Neptune is in Aries now. This is a huge change. This is about a decade, 14 years about, it's going to be in Aries. And Neptune's passage through Pisces was very kind to all esoteric arts and all mysticism. I mean, it's been a bit of a renaissance for astrology and Gnosticism, and many different mystic things have come to the fore. And now that Neptune's moved into Aries, it's going to be interesting to see how that shifts. I mean, the dreams now are shifting to heroes and war to a certain extent within Aries, but we'll see.
Yeah. What about you, Sherilyn? Feel anything shifting?
Oh my goodness, just about everything. It just really feels like there's nothing happening and everything's happening because it's so scrambled right now, and it's really hard to get, some astrologer folks that I know are just saying, it's hard to get a handle on truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to dig deep and figure out what's true for you in every single moment, because it's so scrambled right now. It feels, like the sands are shifting just so dramatically and quickly. And for myself, you know, it's been about reaching out for human contact. So finding those people that you can trust the most and spend quality time with, and then your own inner truth. Because if you're looking out there, or you're just looking on this box, woe betide. But shows like this are helping us put pieces together. So thank you guys so much. I'm really looking forward to this.
Sounds like a Libra ascendant thing with the eclipses happening in an Aries 7th house, maybe.
Well, I am a Libra, so.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Interesting. Yeah. So if we're gonna move forward, what I'd really appreciate, Miguel, is maybe you could tell the story of Elvis's birth.
Sure. That was I actually added it later. It starts with me, and how I discovered Elvis, and I felt that's a crappy way to start a book. So for some reason, I decided to do sort of this semi-fictional story, and this story is an account from Elvis's father, Vernon. And what happened is on January 8th, it was cold even in Tupelo, Mississippi. Gladys was giving birth in their little house. They were so poor they could not afford a doctor. They could not. Some say there wasn't a midwife. It was just family. Gladys had been having bad premonitions. She always had that second sight, and the labor was really hard. And Vernon, after a while, went outside to have a cigarette. And as he's having a cigarette, suddenly he sees this blue light come over the house, and everything freezes. The sound of the wind stops. The coyotes suddenly aren't howling, and he's feeling like this cold. And I go and I kind of tell this story, which Vernon would years later tell Elvis. But Vernon basically freaked out, and he ran inside, and somehow he repressed that memory, or maybe the mothership dropped something down and decided to give him a memory wipe. But probably the reason is that when he went in soon after, Gladys gave birth to the first child. There were twins. She didn't know she was having twins, and the child's name was Jesse, but he came out stillborn. And then Gladys and Vernon had to wait 35 torturous minutes for Elvis to come out, and he came out alive. So these two very ominous and powerful events happen. And then there's a story that even as Gladys went into labor, they had two ceramic dolls as a decoration on a shelf, and one of the dolls fell down and broke, kind of an omen of what was to happen to Jesse. And as I write in the book, the death of Jesse became the biggest, most influential event in Elvis's life. It's something that haunted him for the next 42 years. So that's what happened there on January 8th, 1935.
Indeed. Do you want to pull up that color chart? This is a special chart form that Robin Armstrong made. He developed this. It includes the I Ching, it includes where the constellations are versus the tropical zodiac, and it includes the colors. Now these colors.
That's all right. That was later. That was a joke I had because we're Gen Xers. Is that the one? 23?
That's it. You got it.
Okay, good.
So this color scheme, it goes back to, I believe the first person who wrote about it is Pythagoras. It goes back a long way, aligning the colors to the signs of the zodiac, which also align to notes. Okay. And so Sagittarius is the color blue. Okay. So Sagittarius was rising as Elvis and his brother Jesse were born. And the father sees this blue light surrounding the house. Now, I wonder if it's true that this happened, if he wasn't hiding it, like he claims he forgot, but he was just embarrassed to talk about it because it was such a bizarre, mystical thing, right?
Yeah, what do you say? You're a Southern Christian. It's not like it was angels or the throne of God. What could he say about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this, we'll talk about angels in a minute too. So this chart here is a special chart from. There's numerous different versions of it. Robin does. You can go to his site and buy your own. This one here has a ray cast from every planet in the chart to and from each other with each color that each planet's in. And so when you see this for your own chart, I mean, it's a certain meditation. The color of it is a whole different way to look at astrology and look at your own natal chart. And you see there that the ring around is where the sun is. The sun is in Capricorn, which is indigo. It's a dark blue. And so this color blue, which is a part of Elvis's whole story, right? It keeps coming back within his story.
Yeah, it dominates his life. It was the power when he would envision blue, and it's also very associated with alien visitations and abductions. That's when he could perform his magic, healing, moving objects. Yeah, blue was always there. And if you look at his career, his biggest like movie hit was like GI Blues, and blue was in a lot of his #1 hits and everything. Is the last concert he had, he wore a blue jumpsuit. So yeah, it's all over.
Wow, amazing. Do you want to pull up Elvis's natal chart? I think it's probably numbered 01.
01, you got it.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Okay. So the story of Jesse, his twin, being born and dying is told in his chart in numerous ways. So if you go 35, I didn't include the chart because it's so similar to Elvis's chart, but if you go 35 minutes before Elvis was born, Chiron is right on the descendant. Now, that became important because I listened to you talking about Elvis on another stream, and you were saying that you call Elvis the wounded healer in various ways, that he resonates that archetype.
Right.
Well, within astrology, this minor planet, asteroid, centaur, Chiron is the wounded healer. Resonates this whole mythology. Now, that was right on the descendant setting when Jesse was born. Okay, now it is within the 6th house of illness within Elvis's chart. Okay, and it very closely squares his moon, and the moon can represent mother, but it's also your internal world and your internal emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the power of that, the importance of that is hard to overstate.
Fascinating, yeah.
Yeah. So, and of course, this is within the sign of Gemini, the twins, right? Now, Sagittarius, the rising sign, is also a double-bodied sign. All of the double-bodied signs are considered to be two. It's a mutable thing. They're all bringing two different energies together. And if we so sorry, the Chiron is squaring the moon. The moon rules the 8th house of death. Okay, the 8th house here, which is Cancer, which the cusp is in Cancer, and Pluto is also in his 8th house. Okay, so there's this theme of death is right there with him at his birth. Now, if we go to, so the IC, okay, I'll take a moment for people who don't know that much about astrology. If you look at this chart, if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, the blue arrow, that's Sagittarius. This is the rising sign. This is what's coming up on the eastern horizon at that moment. At this moment, and the beginning moment of anything in life is codified in the sky and is described in the sky as to what can happen, the potential if we manifest it the best that we can. That's the ascendant. That's what's rising on the eastern heaven. Now the arrow at the top with the green yellow, they're actually intestines. That's the sign of Virgo. That arrow at the top is the midheaven. That's the highest point that the ecliptic gets, where the path of the sun and all the planets are all on its narrow band. That's the midheaven. That represents career and status. It's the most visible part of the sky. And if you keep going down to the right, where you have the Gemini sign, the two pillars in orange, that's the western horizon. Okay, that's what's setting, and that's where we take energy in. That's the descendant. Now, if you keep going down to the bottom, the opposite to the midheaven is the IC, the Imam Kali. Now, that is the most innermost part of ourselves. That represents our family and our heritage and this deep inner motivation. And it's in fact it's to the north. If you turn away from the sun and face the north, it's going to be below the earth. It's hidden. It's secretive. Okay, this is important. Remember this for the end of this episode.
All right.
The Imam Kali is very, very important. Now, that I see also, you can think of it as an umbilical cord. It's the umbilical cord to the earth. It's what ties us to grounding within this reality. And that I see is on Pi Cygnus. Okay, the star of Pi Cygnus, which is Azalphaphage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cygnus, all of the constellations have numerous different mythologies attached to them, different star lores. Now, one of the ones that Cygnus is it's the form that Zeus entered in order to pursue Leda.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, depending on which version of the myth you want, he wasn't always a nice guy, but you know all about that. He wasn't big on consent, but anyway.
No, demiurges are gonna demiurge, right?
You got it. So the results of this was Castor and Pollux, as well as Clytemnestra and Helen of Troy. All right, so we're roping in this whole theme of the twins at his IC at his birth. Okay, at the umbilical cord to his mother. Now, the thing about the twins is that one of them's mortal, and the mortal one is Castor. And Castor rises first and sets first. Okay. So we have here Chiron in Gemini, the twins, and it's setting. And like, as you write in your book, and as some people have theorized, it's like the one twin gave up its life in order to give Elvis all its power. You know, and that's literally the myth. Is that actually the immortal one? So it gets even more interesting. Is the immortal one gives up his immortality to bring back his brother, and they have to trade places in the sky. This is coded into his chart in multiple ways, many ways.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, Jesse did become sort of his guide, his daemon, his conscience, the one who, as Elvis was obsessed, he had that guilt syndrome. He was also Jesse was the one that would guide him through dreams and other forms. So yeah, the myth makes perfect sense, Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we look at the rest of his chart, if we start to look at who Elvis was and who he became, he has mystical musician coded in a few ways. Now, one of the more powerful ones, as you mentioned, David Bowie was born on the same day, and their sons are not because of the 365 and a quarter day cycle of the Earth around the sun, and we have the leap year, right? Like the sun can actually be 2 degrees away from itself in a chart, depending on the year. But Elvis and David Bowie, which is your next book, that's why I'm bringing up Bowie, were born 12 years apart, which is one Jupiter cycle.
Right.
Okay, so it divides into 4, so that therefore the sun is in the same place, and in fact, the sun is within 2 arc minutes of each other. Like, it's right on top of it's in the exact same place, basically. Not just a degree away, it's within 2 arc minutes away. And that degree happens to be right on Chelyabinsk, which is the beta star in Lyra. And what that star is it's the tortoise shell that Hermes crafted the first lyre for and then gifted to Orpheus. So it literally represents this magical musical instrument used for magical powers and for prophecy. This is coded on the sun, the creative energy, the heart of both Elvis and David Bowie.
That's amazing.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah, especially I spend a lot of the book connecting Elvis to the trickster, to Hermes, to the different legends, how they fit Elvis. And even Jung had this concept called, well, I'm sure Sherilyn knows, the pure eternal, the boy that never grows up, Peter Pan, Gilgamesh, Hercules, and Elvis fit that pretty well. And of course, Hermes fits that well. They sort of young, sexual, but, take it or leave it kind of thing, just eternally boyish.
Yep, the puer aeternus, definitely.
That's it. Yeah, you said it better.
Now, the other really powerful musical and mystical marker in his chart is that his moon is on Fomalhaut, which is the mouth of Piscis Astrinus. And now this is one of the 4 royal stars of the Arabian heritage. Okay, and it's been collated. There are different systems, but it's been collated to the archangel Gabriel. Okay, And it's the place where this fish takes in the pure water poured out of the stream of Aquarius's jug. It's this pure, it's an energy coming from, the celestial waters, the pure waters, to drink in and give out. And the moon really is, while it's your mother and it's your emotions and your inner world, it's also, when it comes to any artistic pursuit whatsoever, it is your ability to siphon what is inside in your internal world and structure it to bring it out into the world.
Mhm.
And now Elvis has a signature in his chart, which is very common for powerful artists of any sort, which is that he's got Saturn configured to his moon. They're cross-signed, but it actually allows Saturn to be more powerful in its rulership in Aquarius, but they are still conjunct. And Saturn creates the structures and the rigid boundaries. And so it allows him to bring in this powerful energy that's within him. Now, he's not writing his songs, but he's interpreting these songs, and it connects with people so profoundly, right? Like, it cuts through the barrier.
Right.
And as per that, before I forget about the blue color, so the Sagittarius is blue, Capricorn is indigo, this dark blue color. Okay, but it's also one second. Okay, yeah. So the Capricorn note is A major, and the ascendant is the beginning of something, right? This is where we start. And his first single that really takes off, "That's All Right Mama," is in A major. So and the story you tell about him, just nothing's working and he just goes for it and it becomes this big hit. Well, that's his ascendant, right? In Sagittarius, this fiery ascendant, Jupiter ruled, no less, able to bring out this energy. Now, going back to the David Bowie sync with Elvis, so because they both have their Jupiters in the same place, essentially, they're a few degrees away, but they're both within. Now, if we go to the I Ching resonances, which is a system that Robin Armstrong developed, aligning the sequence of earlier heaven to the light cycle of the Zodiac, they're in gathering together both their Jupiters, which is, be merry and the people will come and help. And so Jupiter rules the ascendant of Elvis. It really represents him in his chart in the 11th house of friendships. But it has this element of just be merry and be yourself and sing, and you're going to bring people together. And Bowie has that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting is that Jupiter is upon Zubin Escamilli, which is the northern scale in Libra. Okay, that star. And it's called the price which covers. And it's the more positive of the two scales, with this balance, which you're talking about Elvis at the crossroads. This is in his chart in so many different ways. Well, it definitely implies that he was on the positive end of that scale if his ascendant ruler was on the price that covers.
Right.
Whereas Bowie's star was on Unalke, which is the heart of the serpents. So it's a bit different.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, it's amazing how many synchronicities there are, how it all connects. What do you think, Sherilyn? What do you have to say so far? Anything that jumps out to you?
Oh my! I've got a whole page of notes already. Goodness.
Let them know, because my astrology, that's where I fall short. As we talk, the I Ching is my thing. But, yeah,
well,
take it away.
Even more than that, but just if they were 12 years apart, then they were both the same Chinese zodiac sign as well. So it looks like a wood dog.
I'm not sure. I didn't look into it, but it could be. Yeah.
I just looked it up. Yeah, I think it's wood dog. And so that, if you're saying they're that close in the degrees as well, and this, that's really remarkable. Also, before you even got to this, the Castor and Pollux, the Leda in his chart, I had already written down twin heroes. I just did a presentation on this at the University of Montana about the twin heroes of Navajo myth. About one's the shaman, one's the warrior, one's internal, one's immortal, one's not. And then all the not all, but many of those that archetype across cultures. So I vaguely remember that was part of his story, but then when you said that the the child that died, his name was Jesse. Well, that's my eldest son's name as well, but I know what that name means. It means God exists. That's the name, the meaning of that name.
Wow.
You know, and then Elvis is all wise. So this is just, I mean, really, really amazing. And then as Jason Giorgiani was pointing out in his Closer Encounter books about the blue light coming with these sort of whatever otherworldly visitations, and that phenomenon of everything going quiet when the blue light comes, and then people kind of forgetting. I just read the story today, you know, that people will do this and then they'll just kind of forget about it and then be, oh yeah, you know, so that really struck home. And we can talk about it later in the show, but I sent you a link to the work or the concert he did in Hawaii. And one of the ways they funded that was they filmed Blue Hawaii while he was there.
Oh, interesting.
So there's the Blue Hawaii thing. So,
and you're right, yeah. He is a wood dog. I just checked it.
There you go. So that's my first page of notes. But continue, Noah.
Yeah, and also Whitley Strieber talks about seeing the blue light when sometimes the visitors would come to him. It was a big deal.
Do you want to pull up the synastry chart between Bowie and Elvis? I think it's at the end of the files I sent you. It's Bowie.
The last file. Is it this one?
Is that Bowie? Yeah, that's it. So you can see here, Bowie also has a Moon-Saturn conjunction. So this is the other thing that really tightly aligns. And now here's what's really fascinating. The lunar nodes, which are the, you can see, oh, it's hard to explain. Okay, so if you see the ascendant of Elvis's chart, in all these charts, by the way, Elvis is going to be in the center. He'll be the blue planets in the center. The nodes that are the orange, the little orange like scoops on either side with the ascendant and descendant. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
So the lunar nodes of Bowie's chart are on Elvis's ascendant descendant axis, and the lunar nodes for Elvis's chart are on Bowie's ascendant descendant axis. This is potent stuff. Now, the nodes really imply like where the north lunar node is like ravenous. It's where the moon comes up and is the most visible in the sky. And the south lunar node is where it goes below into the chthonic realm. And it's where people give up on the physical realm. Now, there are some people claim it was a theosophical addition that the nodes represent your past and future life. That's controversial, but I've definitely seen nodal transits and nodal synastry really imply some kind of fated element. So the fact that it's on I mean, the angles are very powerful parts of your chart. The ascendant is where you put your energy out into the world, and the descendant is where you take energy back in. And going back to the color, because it's just so fascinating to me, the blue color in Elvis's chart, I see the ascendant in a way as like a nozzle. So all the other planets have their own colors and their own things they're doing, but everything gets like pushed out the nozzle, you know. And it's like that blue color kind of just permeates everything in his chart as he puts it out into the world. It's not necessarily how he feels it internally, but it's how he puts his energy out. And so we have I don't want to go too deeply into it, but you can see the Jupiter conjunction in Scorpio. You can see the nodal axis, and then the sun, and they both have that Saturn Moon conjunction, which helps them to bring their inner world out in a creative way. If you maybe go back to Elvis's chart,
Sure. Let's see. Let's go back to Elvis. Yeah, I looked up David. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. So I sent you a list of like the planets and the hexagrams that they highlight. Was there anything that really stuck out to you on that?
No, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I have to take a look again.
Okay, fair enough. Just because I sent you that because I know you work with I Ching, so I thought maybe you'd something, and you know so much more about Elvis than I do. You've been working on this.
I'll have to take another look. Yeah, I've been too busy with mine.
Fair enough. So a couple things from his natal chart before we move on and try and go through his life and look at some important stuff that happened in his life. So you'll see the second house is where his Sun, his Mercury, and his Venus is, as well as that North Lunar Node with his Venus, although again across signs, so that changes the energy quite a bit. But this is where his Venus is, you know, he's well, you could make comments about it. His Venus is actually on to say. His Venus is on a few really interesting stars. Terazed, which is Gamma Aquila, and Aquila is Jupiter's form when he goes and picks up Ganymede. Okay, that's the eagle going to pick up Ganymede. So you've got this theme which would resonate through his life with Priscilla for sure. You know, the youth and everything. It's also on Sham, which is Alpha Sagitta, which is the arrow from the centaur's bow, and so this is the arrow, the aim. You know, it's powerful, it's potent. It's obviously a masculine phallic symbol. And then Beta Cygnus as well. We're bringing Cygnus back with the Jupiter and Leda and the twins again. That's his Venus. And his Venus rules his 11th house of friends and his 6th house of illness as well. So there's another link to his brother dying. But so he's got 3 planets and the North Lunar Node in his 2nd house. And the 2nd house is your values, but it's also like physical money. It's also your wealth in a way, what you own. And so you can see this importance coming from poverty, how important it was for him to amass this wealth, right? Yeah. And he was able to do that because you look to the ruler of the 2nd house, which is Saturn, because the 2nd house, and I do use Placidus. It's very out of date now, apparently, but I do still, I look at whole sign, but Placidus is to me how I read a chart. Saturn is in Aquarius, which is one of its 2 rulerships. So Saturn is very powerful in Aquarius. You can see that he had the potential, and his sun is there, and Mercury and Venus. He had this potential to amass this wealth around him. Now, if we get even more interesting, if we look at the controversies around whether or not he was stealing from Black culture, if we look at that, the sun in his chart represents the 9th house. The 9th house cusp is in Leo, and the sun rules Leo. Now, the 9th house is foreign cultures. It's also religion. It's also mysticisms. It's numerous different things, right? Every house and every sign and every planet is a million different things put together. So he has this house that represents foreign cultures in his 2nd house of values and money. Okay, so he made money by co-opting this culture's music and the themes of their music. But I mean, I think he gave them their credit, right? Like, I think he did his best he acknowledged the fact that he knew where it came from. He wasn't stealing. He was, sharing, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, people like B.B. King and Little Richard and so many were like, Elvis was part of us. We were part of a movement. We were tapping into this spirituality. We were Pentecostals. So some people like Ray Charles were furious at him and they accused him. But as I say, what do you expect from a trickster? Trickster is going to appropriate. A chaos magician is going to appropriate. It's what they do. David Bowie was just as bad. And David Bowie used to say, I only steal what I can make more interesting, which was everything.
Another interesting thing about his chart is that the 3rd house is siblings, as we talked about, that you can see that within his chart. And so it's ruled by Aquarius, so Saturn again, and Saturn is in the 3rd house. So you can see that his twin, even in dying, was able to contact him and help him out. And Saturn with the moon, and the moon is really, that would be it can be a psychic resonator. The moon takes in the energy from outside, the stars and the energy that's around, and comes back in. So you can see Jesse coming back to him, right? Coming back to his inner world. But the 3rd house also is how we express ourselves. And specifically, you can look to the 3rd house for voice. And so he's got the moon on Fomalhaut, and the moon really siphons the energy of the stars better than any other planet. That's what it does, right? Mm-hmm. In magical practices, you're looking for where the moon is, and you're able to take whatever the moon's doing and work with it. Right. Now, the moon is on Fomalhaut, which is this powerful artistic signature and psychic signature, really. And that's in the 3rd house of voice. He didn't write his own songs, it was his voice, really, and his movements as well, which you can also look to the 3rd house for dancing. That's really where he connected with people. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Man, there's okay. Maybe we'll come back to some of this stuff if we move on. Oh, here's another one I'll say right now. Uranus, which is the planet of shock and eccentricity, and so it's in the fifth house. It's right past the cusp of the fifth house. Okay, which and the fifth house, which can be children, but it's also your creative works. Okay,
Mm.
that Uranus is right on Vertex, which is the Andromeda galaxy, the closest galaxy to Earth. So like it's almost like he brought in this whole other galaxy into our planet through his creative works. It
Mm.
changed everything.
Very cool.
Yeah. Um, maybe we should move into the next chart. If it just whatever the number is. I think it would be is that Gladys? Is that his mom?
I don't know. Let's see. I don't think I have a. Let's see. 3. Where is it? I just know it's just the numbers you sent me.
Oh yeah, that's oh, so it doesn't have the title. Okay. That's his mom. This is his mom's chart.
Okay.
This is Elvis versus his mom. Now you talk about what's the term you used? Uh
The term I use for his mom is well, we call it helicopter parenting, but it's called lethal enmeshment.
that's the one.
A
That's
very
the one.
destructive psychological syndrome, if you would.
That's the one. So you can see that in numerous ways. I mean, there's a lot of Neptune contact between these charts, and Neptune dissolves, right? So, uh, let me see. Oh, yes, that's it. So his ascendant, really, the ascendant is your identity, and his
Mhm.
ascendant is ruled by Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter is going to be important to him, but his mother's Jupiter is right on his ascendant. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's interesting. That's interesting. So also that also just shows she's going to give him everything, right? Jupiter is the great benefic. She's going to take care of
Mm.
him. She's going to provide everything in the world. He gets everything. Now, his Jupiter is squared by his mother's Neptune. So Neptune dissolves things, and Neptune creates it creates mist and fog. It creates confusion, as well as you know intense devotion. Like fanatical devotion. So her Neptune is squaring his Jupiter in a hard aspect, and then his Neptune is squaring his ascendant. So you can see how even within his own chart, and you wrote about how Elvis didn't necessarily know who he was, right?
Mhm.
That there was a certain amount of confusion about that. Um,
Yeah, he was either the proxy husband or the child without boundaries. That's what happens with lethal enmeshment. They're always at these extremes and they can never explore or settle to a healthy ego boundary.
right.
So eventually, as grown-ups, they tend to be very destructive and prone to addiction and just confuse people. Mother, should I build the wall? Hush now,
Right.
baby, don't you cry. Kind of. Yeah, we can put Roger Waters and David Bowie in the list of people who had abusive mothers. Philip K. Dick too. He
Wow.
got destroyed by his mother too after he lost his twin, Jane.
Which is an understandable way that plays out, right? You think
Yeah,
you're
when
not gonna have a child.
Gladys went to the hospital, they said she could no longer have children. So she lost Jesse. She can't conceive. Of course, she was going to make Elvis the center of her universe and protect him from everything, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, the other part of that is Neptune is opposing his son. His mother's Neptune opposes his son, so it's like she's worshiping the creative spirit of her son, yet she's also dissolving it at the same time.
Mm.
Um, and okay, a quote from your book was one could characterize Gladys as playful but lazy within family circles, timid and deferent in the public arena, and impulsive when it came to men's attention.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's got a fiery moon in Leo. So I mean, Leo moons are like they're not necessarily going to be super fiery out in the world, but in their home, they're the kings and queens, right? The
Hmm.
Leo moon. But she also, so we don't have a time for her, so I don't know how her houses line up, and there's a lot of stuff that I can't really read into it. But she had a Venus in Aries. Okay, so this very what was the quote? Impulsive when it came to men's attention. This is indeed Venus in Aries. This is
Hmm.
fast flashing attraction, and relationships tend to die pretty quickly. It's not a make it last kind of thing.
Yeah,
And then
she
she's
gave that
got
to Elvis.
yeah. And then she's got Sun in Taurus. So there's that lazy, comfortable,
Hmm. Yeah.
getting relaxed, enjoying it. So there's some pretty powerful synastry you can see between them. Their moons are opposed, which is interesting because it seems like she took care of him and he wanted her to move in, and but it's cross sign as well, so that helps to change that energy to not be the exact opposition. um yeah, and then their Mercuries were squared too, which I wonder if they didn't argue a lot. I really don't know. And their Venuses were squared, and their lunar nodes were squared, so there's a lot of, like, I'm sure there was tension between them, but
Well,
there
that's a problem. They shouldn't have been equals. It should have been Vernon got sidelined and Elvis became the king of the house. And that's
right,
not healthy for a kid to be the surrogate spouse when he's just a kid.
right,
So
right, right. Do you want to move to the next chart, which I think is his 11th birthday?
sure, sure. What do you think so far, Sherilyn? Jump in anytime you want if you have a question or comment.
Can you remind me, to Vernon, was he the stepfather? He's the
He was
father?
biological father, yes.
Okay. All right. Because I remember something I've commented upon is that, I used to work in inpatient psychiatry at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and we would have these guys come in, and when we would do the social history, the family history, just try to get the bearings of where they were. And after about the fifth guy that we had the same story, who was, the pampered, adored child of the household who had supplanted the father, and usually there was a stepfather, not a real father. And these guys were just gorgeous. And I looked at somebody and I said, "Are these the model brigade? What's going on?" And they said, they actually are. They're from the old guard. So they would tap the guys that were the best looking men that they could find to be the ones they took the pictures of in Arlington Cemetery. They would bring the caskets because they were going to be the most photographed, right?
No.
But for some reason, they all also ended up being, there was this sort of archetype going on there, right? Where they're this beautiful, adored child of the mother. And this really toxic relationship develops, where the father's powerless and then abuse happens and whatnot. So as you're saying this, oh my gosh, and they would develop these personality disorders, and I'm not a big label fan, but in the sense that they needed that supply. They got used to this adoration from a very young age, and sort of being in charge. So that's so interesting to me, what you're saying about, Elvis having this dynamic in the chart.
He might as well, Vernon might as well have been the stepdad. He spent time in jail. He would leave to small jobs, and he was a very beta kind of wallflower kind of male,
Yeah, that's what, when you kept saying the energy I'm feeling is stepfather. It's like he's not really a father figure role.
Yeah, he was a good father with Elvis when he could. I mean, he was not.
Or just
the abuse came from the mother. Yeah, he didn't have. Gladys was so powerful, as Noah's saying. The town was scared of her for her magic and for her temper. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then when you were talking about this influence of the twin coming back in with the moon, back to the twin heroes and the Navajo story, the shaman brother is the child of the moon. They're both the child of the sun, because the sun's moon's just a reflection of the sun. But when you said, this influence keeps coming in through the moon of the other brother, that just reminded me of this aspect that, the shaman aspect of the twin, that the unseen one, the immortal one, is a child of the moon. So that struck home as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what we've got here is his 11th birthday, the alignment that was happening on his 11th birthday, which is the birthday that they gave him a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find really fascinating right off the bat is Jupiter was on his part of fortune. And the part of fortune sort of relates, it's somewhat nebulous in many ways, you're working with it, but it relates to like what we're born with, what we come into this world, sort of our destiny in a way is the part of fortune. And so there's that. He's got Uranus on his descendant where he's taking energy in, and I think he didn't want the guitar, right? That wasn't like his choice.
No, he wanted a bicycle, but they were so poor. Gladys like nudged him for the guitar, and he finally gave in.
I'm not sure if bikes are cheaper than guitars now. That seems
Yeah,
like
back then.
wow. So yeah, I mean the moon was in Pisces, was in the same sign, like, and then so I didn't include any progress charts, but I'll just take a second to sort of quickly explain what progressions are, because I'll mention it as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
Progressions are the idea that once you're born, every day becomes a year. And so the first 3 months of your life is this slow inner progression that plays out. And it's like the chart is just slowly changing, and it's happening. It's like you're in your mother's womb for 9 months, okay? And the next 3 months is one heliocentric Mercury cycle, and Mercury is the messenger god. So Mercury goes around the sun one time, and basically everything it does, everything it touches, it's almost like it's communicating back to this baby who can't really do anything in the first 3 months. They're just like this receptive blob of flesh, and they're kind of like soaking in all the astrology, and then they slowly play it out through their life. And if there are many synchronicities within that, why that works, that the transits of Saturn become the same length of progress cycle of the moon, and there's all these things that happen. But it's a thing. So I just, without going on a big tangent on that, so if you look at the progressed moon within the progressed houses, if you look at how the houses change at the same time every day about a degree, if you look at the next day, to me this is a really profound way to look at where you're at in life. The progressed moon is in the progressed 8th house of Elvis when this birthday happens. Now the 8th house is the house of death, but it's also the house of other people's resources. So his parents buying him this guitar, which profoundly shapes his life. Jupiter.
Well, I should correct it. Bevs is right. The bicycle is another story, which shows he got a bicycle for Christmas and he gave it away to a kid the next day, and they were so poor. Wow. But it was actually a gun. Bevs, you're right. And of course, Gladys would. That's also that she would have been horrified. I don't want my son to have a gun.
Oh, he'd get his guns later on.
Yeah. He was always armed to the teeth. But I mean, back then, obviously, kids hunted and all that. But she was so possessive that anything that had a whiff of danger, she wouldn't let Elvis have, or she'd beat Elvis, to almost to a pulp if he didn't come home or he did anything risky.
Yeah. Another thing I'll mention now before I forget, in his natal chart, if you look, so the 5th house of creativity and then eventually children is ruled by Aries, so it's ruled by Mars. He has Mars in Libra, which is a sign where Mars is in detriment. So you'd think, okay, well, he's not, his creative works are not going to be, in a very traditional form, except what's happening is that Venus is in Capricorn, which exalts Mars. So he has this mutual reception between Mars and Venus, which is considered extremely powerful. And on top of that, when you write about Elvis sort of eschewing gender norms, well, you've got Mars ruled by Venus and Venus exalting Mars. So you have the Mars and Venus, Mars being the most prominent masculine aspect in a chart and Venus being the most prominent feminine. You have them exalting each other. So there's this certain element of him being able to get around these norms. And
very fascinating.
Yes. And while we're on Mars, another interesting thing is Mars is on Algorab, which is the alpha star in Corvus, the crow or the raven. And there are different myths. One of which is that it was the god Apollo turned into raven form to flee from Typhon. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting because some people link Elvis with Apollo, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Typhon is Set in Egyptian lore, isn't he? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So, there you have it. The ruler of the 5th in the 11th, or in the 10th house. Sorry. So the ruler of the 5th is in his 10th house of career and status.
Mm-hmm.
That's his guitar. If we want to go into the next one, maybe.
That's number 5, and I found the list. Now that's all right, Mama.
Oh yeah, great Great. So I already talked about how it's in A major, so it's a Capricorn sign, a Capricorn song, right? Starts with that energy, and that's his sun. His sun is there, his Mercury is Venus. It's all happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, we kind of. I guess do. I not have him changing towns. Maybe I didn't give you a chart for that, which is fine.
Yeah, it's number 4 on my list.
Yeah.
Unless I think it's this one. I think we're back to 4.
Is this when he changed? No, that's the guitar again.
Okay,
If I don't have a chart, it's fine. We can bypass it. But basically, so they moved to Memphis, which is where he lived the rest of his life, right? And where he wound up really taking in all this culture and all this different music, and he really refined who he was and what he was going to do. What's interesting is the year before, so we talked about progressions. His progressed sun moved from Capricorn into Aquarius, and progressions are long term. It's not like a transit that's one day. It's this long unfolding of your inner world, and every 30 years your progressed sun changes signs, and it is a profound change in your life. So his progressed sun moving from Capricorn into Aquarius is Saturn ruled like Capricorn is, but it has more of a forward looking agenda than Capricorn. Capricorn is like promoting the past order, you know. It's like propping up the past agenda or the past sort of like machinations of society, and Aquarius kind of wants to restrict what's been and create something new. There's a bit of a forward looking momentum there, and so that's his progressed sun moving into Aquarius. And what's interesting is just as they move, his progressed moon is about to move out of the 8th house into the 9th house. Now, the 8th house is the resources of other people, and now he's moving into the 9th house, like a foreign land, and he's taking on all these foreign influences coming into him. As well, oh, we don't have that chart. That's fine. But Pluto opposed Jupiter, was opposing his Jupiter, which is his chart ruler, and Jupiter is also our understanding and our wisdom and how there's also a Neptunian aspect to it, and I really think that I'm sure when Elvis moved, he was confused. Like, he didn't understand why they were moving. He probably didn't want to move. I'm sure he was against the whole idea.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is the That's All Right Mama chart, I think. Is that what
this one is let's see. That is the one, yes.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
Wait. No, I think it's the next one. Let's see, is that no, this is the one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So here again, we're talking about the 9th house and this foreign influence, right? Pluto Pluto had been moving back and forth across his 9th house for a while. Pluto moves very slowly, but Venus had just moved into the 9th house that day when he recorded that song. So, meeting Pluto and meeting this, Venus is our aesthetics and our what we like and what we hate. So you can see that within it. And at this point, the progressed moon had moved into his 10th house of career and status. So now the moon in his progressed chart is highlighting his status and his career. It's begun, right? Elvis has arrived. He's entered the building. But you can also see this pile up in his 7th and 8th house. And again, 8th house is other people's resources, and he's got Uranus there, and he's about to have a nodal return as well. You can see the nodes are moving to conjunct themselves in his chart. Which can be powerful. That's a 19-year cycle, and it can really portend big changes. That's also where you get your Metonic return, where on your birthday the sun and the moon are in the same place as when you were born every 19 years. Did I have anything else to say? So the sun.
The sun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm just going back. I've already said that. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. We can move on from that. But again, no, sorry. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I think this is when he signs with Parker, or when he meets Parker. I'll put the chart for when he met him, not when he signed with him. And you can see some warning signs, I think.
What are the
It's
warning signs?
okay. Well, the first off thing that's interesting is Saturn is conjunct his Jupiter in this chart. And
Hmm.
so he's going to be able to create some structures that his Jupiter can express itself in.
Hmm.
Um, Neptune is on his part of fortune, which is what he comes into this world with. So there's some confusion there, But perhaps, I mean, what's your stance on Parker in the end? I didn't get that far in the book.
Oh, I come up with many theories on why they worked. Some are just neutral, some are positive, some are negative. We talked about the pure Eternus. What's the opposite? Senex, the old man that can control those energies. And then, of course, I talk about in alchemy, you've got Hermes and Saturn, two forces that need to work with each other. And Rudolf Steiner, he talked about Lucifer and Ahriman. Elvis is Lucifer and Parker was Ahriman, and both together, they needed each other so they could make something unique. Let's put it that way.
You said Saturn and Hermes, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you look
Well,
at a
in
lot of
in that day, Mercury was just moving past its square to Saturn.
oh wow.
So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've got Chiron is right on his Venus and North Node, and we like the lines in the middle. I mean, the red lines are the hard aspects, so you can just look at the color and see all
Right.
the difficult aspects. Pluto is opposed to Saturn. Elvis's own concept of what is structure and order is going to be a power struggle to a certain extent, and Uranus is on his Pluto, and I mean, there's a lot going on. Uranus and Jupiter are conjunct. Jupiter's coming to conjunct Uranus in his 8th house of shared resources. So a shocking intrusion upon what Elvis has earned, right? To a certain extent. And it's opposing his inner world. It's going to oppose his Sun and his Mercury and his Venus. So obviously there was difficulties. It portends some difficulties. And Pluto's moving to oppose his moon, which we'll get to.
Hmm.
But it's prominent. But I guess we can move on from that one.
All right. Sherilyn, what do you think? You okay?
Yeah, just thinking of, in an archetypal sense that, somebody who could never be under the authority of his dad is going to have a challenge with any
Hmm.
father figure that comes along, but it's going to be unconscious, right? He's going to be drawn to him because he needs that, but then he's going to fight with him because he doesn't want that. Because
Right.
there was never any, standard development of how you do that projection. But yeah, those colors you could just see. Big cross.
They clashed, yeah.
And what's
And
the next one? Sorry.
well, even more insidious is when when Gladys passed away in 58, huge blow to Elvis. Well, to the whole family, right? But to him, it was his life was gone, and he felt guilty because her health went down when he started getting famous. It's that deal with the devil. I got rich to take care of my mama, but my mama hated me being rich because I was always touring and doing movies and away from her. So she started drinking, popping pills, and she passed. But Parker, despite being Saturn or Ahriman, he was also very much a trickster too, because he played it just right. He moved in and became Gladys, the archetypal mother, because Vernon wasn't strong enough. Parker's like, well, let me do the funeral plans. Let me do this. He slowly even put Vernon more in the sidelines and became both Elvis's father and mother archetype to control Elvis. Now, eventually Elvis would lash back. Like you're saying, it was always big storms in the sky with those two.
Yeah.
Is this the Ed Sullivan show, this one?
Let me check real quick. Is there Ed Sullivan?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, that is. You're right. Yes.
So leading into that, I don't think I gave you a chart because it was like for 25 weeks in the second half of 1956, he ruled the charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't include a specific chart for that, but within that time, Jupiter was trining his ascendant. So the Great Benefic was there, giving his own identity this huge boost. And trines are coming from a sign that's the same element. Mm-hmm. It's an aspect of ease. And it was moving into the ninth house. Again, we have this element of the ninth house, which is very interesting. And so at the end of that, it's Jupiter's moving through his ninth house while he's ruling the charts, and then Jupiter conjuncts his MC, his midheaven, the peak of status. The great benefic is like, all right, you're the king. Here you are.
Mhm.
You've arrived. And in the meantime, his progressed moon, when he's really rising, is in the progressed 11th house, which can be seen as gifts from the king, because the midheaven in the 10th house is the king, that's the ruler, and then it's the gifts that are given out are the 11th house. It comes next, but it's also friendships, which we'll get to later, and social groups. Okay, so what we have is his legendary stint on his first appearance on Ed Sullivan, right?
Right.
And so his Neptune, what I love is Jupiter and the sun, like the sun had just conjunct Jupiter right on his Neptune. You can see that at the top of the chart in Virgo there. And his Neptune is dreams and visions, right? So he changed the visions of the whole society. All the kids who tuned in that day and saw him gyrating were like, what is this? And it's funny because it's in the sign of the Virgin, right? And he was this sexual icon, and the parents were clutching their pearls, and oh my God, what has gone wrong? And as well, the sun was trining his own sun, so very tightly, Jupiter and the sun trining his sun, giving his own self-creative expression full range to go. And then he's got, that's not it. No, that's not it. Okay, so yeah, that's basically it. You can see Jupiter moving towards his midheaven, and he's arrived.
Got it.
And I think the next one we go to would be Graceland, him buying Graceland. Yeah, it is. It is.
Oh yeah, it is. Yes, you're right.
So Jupiter's actually retrograding back over his MC, so it would have crossed his MC already. It's coming back over his MC, so it's like, I've created all this wealth, I've earned all this wealth, now what am I going to do with it? And so when something's on the MC, the midheaven, it's opposing your IC, which is your inner world, which is also your home and your family. Well, look, he's got a pile up, just like in his natal chart. He's got the sun, Venus, and Mercury on the IC down there at the bottom of his chart. Mm-hmm. So this is this accentuation of, okay, now I can buy my home. I can make my home happen for myself. And what's interesting too is look at Saturn there, which really Saturn doing a 30-year transit around your chart really shows where you should be working and what you should be dealing with at the time. Saturn had just moved below the ascendant. Okay, and what's above the horizon is what's visible. This is your status. This is your ability to shine in the world, right? Now, Saturn had just, so first off, being on the ascendant, Saturn on the ascendant is going to be a rough transit. It's going to be depressing and restrictive. But at the same time, it's telling you, listen, you need to get your act together, because Saturn's going down below, and it's going to start to slowly formulate structures or show you where the weaknesses are in your basement, where are the cracks in your basement. Saturn's coming. And so Saturn moving below the ascendant shows that Elvis was like, okay, I'm buying Graceland. This is going to be my home.
Interesting.
Yeah. And at that point, the progressed moon was in the 12th house. The 12th house we'll talk about a little bit later, but amongst other things, such as self-defeat, like where people destroy themselves, where they become their worst enemy. It's also where people go to be alone. It's like when people just need to leave the world. And so the progressed moon was in the 12th. That's where he bought Graceland. That's where he's gonna make his fort happen. And the next thing we got, things take a dark turn for Elvis.
Next slide.
Yep. Oh, actually, go back to the last slide. There's something else I didn't even think about. Just for 1 second. The moon that day was on Jupiter. Wasn't that interesting? Because the moon is your home, right? Your family. So the transiting moon hit his Jupiter, where he was able to give back to his mother, because the moon is also mother. Mm-hmm. Here's my home for my parents. Okay, just had to point that out.
All right. So we got in the army now.
Yes, in the army now. So the first thing that you note right away is that Saturn is squaring his MC and IC axis. Saturn is restricting both his public life and the MC, and his IC is personal world. Okay, so you can see that axis prominently, and Saturn is in his first house, so it's also redefining who he is as a person. It's restraining him and his ability to express himself. Now, Pluto moved into Virgo, opposing his moon as well. Okay, this becomes more important, and Saturn is below the ascendant. So when Saturn is below the ascendant, it tends to be a time of regrouping, a time of going back and creating a new plan for the future of your life. So Pluto about to oppose his moon. Actually, yeah, it's in Virgo. So Pluto's opposing his moon, so that's harsh, He's going to be thinking extremely harshly about what's happening in his life and where he's going. A lot of paranoia, anxiety, and and Jupiter's moving past his part of fortune, which is interesting. This is his lot in life. He had to do this too, and I mean also Chiron. Yeah, I'll leave that alone. So so there's a few things there, anyways. And at that point, I believe the progressed moon was still in the 12th house. Would have been in the 12th house. So feeling constrained and constricted, and
Right.
So if you can move on to the next one if you want.
This was that the year he went into the army. That's what you said.
Yeah.
I think too. You could look at that symbolically and say, if I like to look at things with this warrior shaman archetype. If he's really actually putting on that suit of the warrior, he's, in a symbolic way, is moving as far away as he can from that shamanic, from his brother. Must have seemed like sort of the apex of that contrast.
Yeah, totally.
For sure. All right, now we are the fall of Gladys.
Oh, what's interesting about what you were saying too is Chiron, because we know his wound is about his brother. It's so clear in the mythology of his chart. Chiron was just about to move into the third house. What you're saying there about his brother and it moving him further away from his connection to his brothers. That's very interesting. And moving to conjunct his Saturn and his moon. So, okay, so we're this is the Gladys chart now?
Yes.
Okay. Now the really important thing here, as his mother dies, is Pluto is opposing the moon, and the moon is mother, and Pluto is the dark lord of the under realm, right? And I've seen it many times that Pluto hard aspects to the moon is the death of the mother. Like, it's not to be feared. You can't change these things, and it's not necessarily going to happen. It's based on all kinds of other predictive methods, but frequently Pluto hard aspect to the moon. I've seen it, especially the opposition. So, it's there. It's there. And again, Saturn is squaring the MC and IC, and the MC and IC is the parental axis. And that's a certain amount of another thing that is debated, is the fourth house the mother or the father? Is the 10th house the mother or the father? There's different systems. The fourth house is always your parents. It's always your ancestry to begin with, but you can put the father in the 10th or your mother in the 10th. I won't get into the weeds on that. There's good reasons for both of them. But either way, Saturn, who's also a death significator, is squaring that, right? As we saw when he went into the army. Now, that day, where's the moon? Yeah, the moon, which is the mother as well, the transiting moon had just moved into the 8th house, which is the 8th house of death. It had moved into his 8th house and was opposing his sun. So you've got all these different significators, and the moon in his chart rules the 8th house. So the moon in his house represents death. The mother represents death. And it was in some ways this challenge that he had to work with, dealing with the overmothering issue, right? So it's his mother also represents death in his chart, shared resources. So there's a lot of nuance there. And as well, the moon the next day would have conjunct Pluto in his chart, his own Pluto, his own death. So, and Venus was right on Pluto. There it is. And I mean, the next thing we go to, if unless you got more to say about that.
No.
So Venus is on Pluto. So he's lost his mother, but he's going to meet Priscilla. Actually, go one further. I want to do Priscilla's chart first. That's when he met her, but this is the synastry between Elvis and Priscilla. The first thing right off the bat you see is Venus is in Aries, just like his mother had Venus in Aries.
Oh, wow. Okay?
Yeah. And there's some interesting. So her sun is on his Chiron, this wound. Her Gemini sun is pinging that wound. He needs that twin back, and so he thinks maybe he's found his twin. And I mean, despite the pedoic of the whole thing, I do believe that he genuinely cared for her. Like, it's like there's a lot of synastry that shows that it would have been a profound connection. But again, look at Chiron was on his midheaven. So he was feeling the death of his mother, that wound, that emptiness, and he feels this connection. Now, where's the connection coming from? The moon, their moons are in trine. So they both have watery moons. They both have this inner world that's very responsive and very tuned into the emotions, right? And to me, when I do synastry between people, I'm most interested in the synastry between the moon, because if you're looking at how am I going to work with this person, or how am I going to live with this, especially how am I going to live with this person, it's your inner emotions you need. And the next thing is the Mercury, because Mercury is how you talk to people, how you communicate. If you can't communicate, you're not going to make that relationship work. And their Mercuries were also in a trine. They had earthy Mercury. So they had this inner watery emotional world. And then they both had this more practical, earthy, grounded way of communicating that. So when I see that their moons and their Mercuries were in trine, I can see that, yeah, there was something going on there. Not sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And when he met her, by the way, his progressed Venus, we've been talking about progressions, had just moved into Pisces. So Pisces is the sign of Venus's exaltation. So his progressed Venus was about to conjunct his moon. So his mother had just died. Progressed Venus is now touching his moon. When his mother died, his progressed Venus was on his Saturn. Okay, so it was restricted and restrained. Now his ability to love and feel and create this connection is now on his moon. Okay, and he's lost his mother. So now, he's trying to replace his mother with a child. But anyways.
Yep.
What to say about that. So the other important thing, if you want to go back to the chart before this where he met her, okay, Venus in the chart was retrograding from Virgo into Leo. When Elvis was born, okay, so Venus, the synodic cycle of Venus works in 8-year cycles, okay? It forms this 5-pointed star. It's the pentagram. Okay. It will, every 8 years, it will retrograde in about the same place, slowly moving back. But basically you have these 8-year cycles where Venus is going to retrograde in the same sign, and it will connect. If you go back to a Venus retrograde cycle in your life and count back 8 years, you're going to see the connections. And so he was born before Venus was retrograding in this spot. So this was pinging his birth chart. This was a profound a profound retrograde cycle for him every 8 years. And so that was happening. So again, there's another thing where this important moment is happening for him, is specifically about, love and yeah. But, Venus also rules his 11th house. So he could have just been friends. He could have just
Good. Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Oh, the other yeah, okay. So his progressed sun at the time was trining his descendant. The descendant is, where you take energy in, and it's also your partner. It's your wife or whatever, and his moon, progressed sun, trining descendant, and moon was conjunct Mercury. Okay, so the progressed moon was on his Mercury, which is the lord of his 7th house. It rules his 7th house of relationship. So it was pinged in all these ways. I mean, it was somewhat fated, you see that it had to happen for whatever reason. I think that's all I got for that.
All right, next slide. Wedding.
The wedding, you got this is the wedding slide?
That is the wedding slide. No, it doesn't look like the wedding slide. It looks like that's the wedding slide. Yes.
Oh, I didn't do. Okay, I did it as a separate chart. Okay. 1 second. Yeah. So, yeah, you can tell that he didn't hire an astrologer to elect his wedding. I'll tell you that much. Um,
He did do astrology charts. He did do them, but yeah, the
well,
wedding. I think that was he let Parker take care of that for the publicity and the media storm and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, electional astrology is a really difficult version of astrology because I think the universe is always smarter than you are. There's always something else happening in the chart that you're not seeing.
Right.
So, Venus rules the fifth house of children and of romance and sexuality. And Venus here is in the 12th house, which is a difficult house. I mean, most people would say it's the most difficult house of, feeling restrained and constricted and often hidden from yourself. So that's not great. The descendant would rule the partnership itself, and that's Saturn, and Saturn is in Aries where it's in fall. And in the 10th house. So, I mean, look, this is the purpose of the chart. The relationship is in the 10th house, but it's not in a good condition. The ascendant is in Cancer, and the moon is over in the 8th house of shared resources, which would, I'm sure, become important for Priscilla anyways later on. But, the moon has no great dignity there. The Jupiter is, where's Jupiter here? Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So that's the one good thing. You've got Jupiter angular in the first house, and it's ruling the midheaven, the purpose of the chart. So that's like the one good thing. But it's kind of like, and then you've got like the building Pluto Uranus conjunction, which I think is one of the key factors, since this is the Generation X podcast of Generation X, was that Pluto Uranus conjunction. And it's happening right on the IC of the chart. So that your home life is going to be absolutely chaotic with Uranus and Pluto there. Like this is, and it's squaring Venus, which is the general significator of love, and in this chart, the significator of the 5th house. Like it's not great. It's not great.
That's a bad day.
Yeah, for sure. And you've got Mars retrograde in Libra, where it's
just stop. Just say everything's bad. Move on.
All right, we'll move on.
Oh God, I guess it was worse and worse.
Well, we can go to the next one. Is Lisa Marie is born. And so the transits on that day become your child, right? So how you're feeling that day, that's the kid. That's the energy you got to work with, right? There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. I mean, his Uranus is on her midheaven. So, really, obviously the shocking elements of Elvis, everything he did to change the world becomes a big part of her life and why we know her. That's her most visible thing, right? Is because she was born to Elvis. So the thing that really shocks me, I mean, it must have been a rough day for Elvis, I would assume, because Chiron's on his IC. So he's dealing with all these, he probably was dealing with fears considering his brother died in childbirth. Chiron on the IC is pinging this birth moment. And then Uranus is opposing that on the MC, and Pluto is moving to also conjunct his MC. So he's got all this difficult energy happening that day. And I mean, where she takes energy in, her descendant. I don't know about that. Her descendant is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in fall in Aries. So, I like having a father like Elvis. I mean, it's gonna affect how you relate to other people. It's gonna, I don't know how you grow up from that. It can't be easy, even in the best of circumstances. Even if he's holding it together, I mean, when you grow up in fame, it's got to be rough. It's got to be rough.
Mm-hmm.
And so she
passed last year. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I believe so. Early last year or the year before. Yeah, you're right. It was pretty recent.
Did she have children as well?
She had 2 children.
Okay.
One unalived himself tragically, and then you've got Riley Keough, who's actually now in charge, and she's actually a very successful actress, very good actress.
Great.
There you go.
She also has Neptune in her 4th house of home, so I mean, you can see, and it's within Elvis's 12th house, and you can put self-destructive behaviors, especially drugs, into the 12th house. And that's her 4th house. That's her home. So his drug addiction becomes, this prominent factor of her home life. You can see that in the chart. And I mean, it's her Neptune is squaring his moon. So, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he had his own guilts and his own issues about what happened, and not being there for her. You can see it. And then his Neptune opposes her moon. So there's this, as we move on through the rest of his life, I mean, Neptune becomes the story. It becomes a story of Neptune, which is the planet of drugs and confusion, and
Wow. So the next one we go back a little to 1964, where he meets Larry Geller.
Oh yeah, I did that already. That makes sense. I see why I did that. Okay, so he meets his guru, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're at. So again, we've got that Pluto-Uranus conjunction, and it's happening on his Neptune, which is like, it can be self-undoing and drugs and all these other things, but it can also be your mysticism and your religion and your dreams. So you've got all the outer planets kind of piling up there within his 9th house, and the 9th house is of religion and is of philosophy and such. So this is powerful, and it's also that really potent, because these outer planet conjunctions don't happen very often. You wait 100 years. We've had 2 in our life. Well, I wasn't around for this one, but we've had 2 in your lifetime anyways, the Gen X lifetime. You were born under this one, and there was the Uranus Neptune conjunction in the 90s, and that's it for our lifetime. We won't see another one.
Wow.
Yeah. They're profound, and they change things. So this one, the power struggles, and then the shocking of Pluto and the shocking nature of Uranus, that's the 60s right there. You can describe it right there. And then in the 90s, there was an opening up of the shocking nature of Uranus with the dreams and visions of Neptune, with the internet coming in, and the way media was, and and it kind of came crashing down in the 2000s. But all about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we're pinging his 9th house of his own religion, his own philosophy. And what's really fascinating is that Saturn is in Pisces now. So Saturn's conjunct his moon, okay, which is a pretty difficult, depressing transit usually, but also it's creating structure on his Fomalhaut moon. He's got this moon on this mystical star, and so now he's finding a container. He, what's the name of the guy? Larry? Is that his name?
Larry Geller.
Yeah, Larry Geller is giving him all the materials he needs to learn these different esoteric arts, and he's creating a structure for the mysticism he's always felt. And by the way, I didn't really get into that, but Elvis having a Pisces moon, he resonates Pisces energy, and that's kind of a vibe. Like, it's hard to really explain, but you see Elvis, and there's this aloofness and this, like ability to connect and yet stay aloof. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so Saturn is on his moon, and they're best friends, right? And Geller's giving him all this material, and he's helping to structure this mysticism for Elvis, and his friends get in and kind of bust it up, right? Well, that happens right around the time that Saturn leaves Pisces and moves into Aries, and Saturn's in fall. So basically the whole time Saturn's in Pisces, he's getting this great philosophical, and Pisces being ruled by Jupiter is all about the big picture, the philosophy. And then Saturn moves into fall in Aries, and suddenly it all goes away. Yeah. And what was the other thing about that?
We can always come back to it. No worries.
Yeah. Well, also another important thing is that Neptune is on his Jupiter. So Neptune is bringing these other dreams into his ability to understand, his wisdom, his philosophy. These are all Jupiterian themes. So it's like the mystical elements of Neptune coming into his more contained philosophy, which also represents his ascendant. So as much as his social group was against this movement, it could have been the best thing for his life, right? Like, it could have saved his life. And you can see that because Jupiter represents him in his chart. And that's it can represent your health. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is that if you look at his friend group, the Memphis Mafia, the 11th house is the friend group. Okay. And so his 11th house is in Libra. And I from what I can tell, he had a very Libran element towards other people. It was all, all very accepting and very peacemaking, is from what I understand. So that's ruled by Venus in his natal chart. And if we go down and look at Venus, his Venus is right on Rahu, the North Lunar Node, which is this ravenous energy. So if Venus is his friends, it's like more, more, more. And so he's bringing all these people who are destructive into his life. You can see that in the chart. And and also Uranus squares his Venus. So again, another destabilizing, eccentric, shocking influence on his friendship, his friend zone.
Did you said he had his moon was in Pisces?
Yeah.
I understand, Elvis. I have a Pisces moon.
There you go. It's a good moon. It's a good moon.
All right. Shall we go to comeback?
We're at the comeback. Okay. I'll just say that when he got divorced, I don't think I sent a chart for that. I didn't. It's too much to look at. But his progressed moon, which we keep talking about, was on K2 in the 7th house. So he's got on progressed K2, by the way, because I'm looking at progressed moon on progressed K2. K2 removes things. K2 draws the energy out of something. And so his divorce, his progressed moon highlighting in the 7th house of relationships, K2 is there with it. So that was the sort of important thing where he gave up on the relationship. So we're on the comeback special now.
Yes. I think Sherilyn just watched it. Didn't you watch it recently?
I did. We were watching it last night. I was showing introducing my 9-year-old to Elvis.
Oh, wow.
What year was that? Was it 61? No,
68, I believe.
68.
Yeah.
I was thinking too. So this idea that the Beatles had hired screamers.
Yes,
you ever heard that?
I have, to copy Elvis.
That Jay Weidner he said that it's not a myth. His wife actually was a paid screamer.
Wow.
So this actually did happen. But I was listening to some of his live shows, some early ones. Those gals aren't getting paid. That is some spontaneous Dionysian frenzy. That was crazy.
That's a Kundalini being released. It's spiritual, it's sexual, it's everything.
There is no faking that. No way. I was contrasting that with like the comeback specials and then the later concerts where people are literally sitting in their seats. They're just sitting there watching them. It was so interesting to me. What happened in this culture where, when did you say the comeback special was?
68.
But it wasn't, it was before Manson. So it was before everything crashed and burned. I guess the later concerts were in the 70s. But I don't know. It was so interesting. I guess the one was really staged, right? It was for TV.
It was staged, and it was like during the day and the shots and pauses. Yeah. But yeah, his concerts in the 70s, women were going wild too.
Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe when I was watching it was just, certain shots, but I'm like, why are people sitting in their seats? It
was also a Christmas special. You couldn't show Dionysian.
You can't do that.
No, it was Christmas time, so they had to keep it.
Got it.
Keep low key.
So we're on the comeback special. We've got a pile up on his MC, on his midheaven. You've got Jupiter conjunct Uranus with K2, which is interesting. You wouldn't think K2 would be involved, but maybe, because that's the one where they did like an acoustic set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
He revolutionized the unplugged set. So K2 removing the electricity out of the room. Uranus is electricity. So you've got, you can kind of get there, but K2 generally wouldn't be what you'd want for a concert. But you said they were sitting down, they weren't jumping up. And Pluto, this power struggle, is moving on his midheaven, but you've got all this stuff. And he had a Mars return that day. Look at that. Mars was conjunct itself, and that's a powerful return. That happens every 2 years, and there's a lot of energy when Mars meets itself in the chart. If you start looking at your astrology, look for that Mars return and plan some physical activity. You'll get her done. And also, you've got the Sun and Mercury on his ascendant that day. You've got Venus also about to return to itself. It's a few degrees away, but Venus is about to conjunct itself. So he has these two, Mars and Venus, which we already talked about being this powerful significator in his chart of his own sexual power. They're both returning when he does the comeback special. So you can see why it was an important moment for him. And on top of that, we'll go back to the progressed moon and the progressed houses was in the 5th house of creative activity, creative expression. Yeah, it kind of gets dark from here. I think that's the last fun chart I put together.
Let's see, come back. Yes, because the next one we've got. Oh, hey, Valerie, good to see you. If you knew that, into all the such, he wasn't even the books. He didn't like to use numerology or astrology to predict things. He wanted to see the code of the universe and reality and explore God. So he did it once in a while, but not. Again, predicting stuff was never his soothsaying. He stayed away from that if he could. It's more like, self-knowledge, introspection, his relationship with the divine. That's what he did. These disciplines. All right, so now we got the final concert.
Yeah.
His final concert, sorry.
So first off, you've got Neptune on his ascendant. And this is obviously not a great sign considering where this ends, right? So the drugs are taking him over. Now, within the year before, when did it happen exactly? Let me see.
Final concert was it June in, I think it was Indianapolis.
Yeah.
When
was it? June in 77?
June 26, 1977, yeah.
77.
Okay, so at the end of February 1977, his progressed sun moved into Pisces. Okay. And so, like I said, these 30-year trends of where the progressed sun is extremely powerful in terms of your life and your inner world and how you're perceiving things. Now, Pisces is a mutable sign ruled by Jupiter, and it's water. It's water-based. And Pisces has the capability more than any other sign to relate to absolutely everything all the time. It can really sense what's going on around it, sometimes to a destructive degree, because it's hard to really feel everyone else's emotions, and it's hard to understand all the pain and suffering in the world. And so Pisces can kind of play out in two ways. Either they can be the ultimate charity, right? Like the ultimate person going out there trying to save everyone, or they can become extremely aloof and withdraw and try to numb themselves as much as possible, which is where that sort of substance abuse with Pisces comes in. And so with the progressed sun moving into Pisces, it's like Elvis could have potentially moved into his mystical practices and done this healing work that he was capable of doing, but instead he took the other path. For whatever reason, it was too difficult for him. And so that's sort of the prelude. I mean, his final concert, you've got the moon in Scorpio where it's in fall, conjunct Uranus. So obviously that's difficult. I'm sure he was feeling horrible that day. And within the 11th house, which is groups and social groups, but it's a visible house, and he was in there. And yeah, the month leading up to the final concert, his progressed moon was conjunct Neptune. So again, we're pinging that Neptune thing. It's relentless at the end of his life. And his progressed moon, which again rules his 8th house of death, is on Neptune. And to me, that really shows that it was the death of his career, right? That was the end, even though he was working on another tour, right?
Right. Yep.
And also another significator of that is that Pluto is in his 10th house. So there's another death to the career significator there. Pluto moves into his 10th house, and it was moving to conjunct his Mars, which is your muscles and your ability to do things in the world. And I mean, Mars also rules his fifth house of creativity and artistic endeavors, and Pluto's there to shut it down. Shut it down. And from there, really, we have yeah. Actually, do you want to go to the next slide? I believe it's the tarot card, the Eight of Cups.
Yes, it is actually.
All right. So this is in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This is a card correlated to the first decan of Pisces, where his moon was, and this is the Lord of Abandoned Success. And you can see him walking away from all these cups, walking towards the moon, which is where his moon was. Right. And I mean, I think consciously he never gave up on his career because he was booking a tour, but I mean, spiritually he did, spiritually he did. So I thought that was very interesting because this is where his progressed sun had just moved into. So we talked about his friend, the Memphis Mafia. This is another interesting, if you want to go to the next chart, maybe.
Next chart is the fall of the king.
Indeed. You had a quote in the book, which is, "The king is always killed by his courtiers. He is overfed, overindulged, overdrunk to keep him tied to the throne. Most people in the position never wake up."
Yeah, that's John Lennon talking about Elvis.
Yeah, wow. And so the ruler of his 12th house is Mars. And Mars squares his sun from the 10th house. But also, if you were to look at this chart from a whole sign house perspective, it would be his 11th house of friends. And so there, his friends and also his own self-undoing are in a hard aspect to his sun. And Mars also in Libra shows that his friends were in ill repute. The Mars in Libra. That's not a sign that's comfortable for Mars. And Pluto is right on Mars pinging that. So, so when I look at all this, I don't see, in my opinion, I don't see evidence that he was unalived by some nefarious source beyond the doctors prescribing the pills. That's real, and I don't think it was purposeful. I don't think he was, I'm prone to conspiracy theories, but I don't see the evidence in this chart. I think he did it to himself, it was his own self-destructive activities. I mean, I timed this chart for 7 a.m., which I believe is the last time he was seen, right? He goes to his chamber.
Yeah, it was late.
7 a.m. And the IC of that chart, the inner world, is in his 12th house. Of the earth at that time, beneath was highlighting his IC. And and the nodes are squaring his sun. The lunar nodes are squaring his. So he was at the northern bending. His sun would have been at the northern bending, around there, and where was
interesting? Interesting.
And so Saturn is in his 8th house here. Saturn is just about to move into his 9th house, and the 9th house is of foreign travels, and the sun had just moved into his 9th house. So here it is, the ultimate trip, right? He's moving from death into the next realm. And Venus had just moved into his 8th house that day. And Venus, by the way, is the lord of the 6th house. The 6th house is of illness. And so when you see combinations of the 6th and 8th house, that's trouble. That's trouble. And so the lord of his 6th house moves into his 8th, which would happen every year, right? But this year, with all these other things happening. And his progressed moon was in the 8th house of death. The progressed house of death. The transiting moon was on his Neptune, and so the moon was highlighting that substance abuse. Pluto is on Mars. Yeah, so that's what happened at the end there. That's what happened at the end
there. Interesting.
But Elvis never dies, right?
No, he never died. He just transformed. Yeah, Bevs, yeah. You don't like Priscilla. Yeah, the Elvis fandom is not, to say the least, is not a fan of Priscilla. She is not liked for various reasons, but
Yeah, also Saturn was opposing his Saturn, so he's going through like this was his midlife crisis too. That Saturn opposition happens for everyone at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, but natal charts go on past the moment we die because we all have a legacy, right? And so they continue to resonate out in the world. And this is why I contacted you, because I was excited about this book. I was trying to get you canceled. It's if you're not going to give me the book, that's it. We're done with Miguel. He's done. But then I found the date that you were releasing the book that I have on pre-order, and that would be the next chart.
Yes,
so let's look what's happened. The release date of this book is April 8th, and I wanted to do this stream on April 8th because it's the day after Mercury stations direct. That would have been better, probably. But now look at this chart. Look what's happening here. We're in the midst of just an absolute gong show happening within Pisces and Aries. Okay, we've had an eclipse cycle. We had a lunar eclipse in Virgo, highlighting the Virgo Pisces axis, and now we're just coming off of the final solar eclipse in Aries. Okay, and in the meantime, we had both Mercury and Venus retrograding out of Aries back into Pisces. And the Rahu, the North Lunar Node, at the end of Pisces, Saturn also in Pisces, and Neptune moving into Aries 2 days ago. This area of the chart is just lit up in a way that you rarely see. This much crazy activity happening all in the same place. This is Elvis's IC. This is the deepest, most inner part of Elvis's chart. Okay. And you're not writing a book about Elvis's career. You're writing a book about his inner occult practices. And one of the significations of the fourth house is that which is hidden, that which is private. So without realizing it, you released the book the day after Mercury stations direct. It stations direct. Remember we said 2 arc minutes away, the sun with Bowie and Elvis, 2 arc minutes. Mercury stations 2 arc minutes, stations direct 2 arc minutes from his IC. So Mercury is finally moving forward on his IC, okay, the day you release this book. Now, it wasn't elected this way, but because the chart moves on, to me, this tells me that your book is extremely important in the legacy of Elvis, that it's now revealing this hidden side and people can start to view him from a whole new perspective.
Awesome. Well, good deal. Good deal. I'm glad the stars agree. I don't want to mess with the stars.
And yes, and because we've been talking about the progressed moon is his progressed moon, which is still moving out there, out in imaginal space, is on his IC as well. His progressed moon is on his IC right now. And so the other really fascinating thing is the progressed ascendant, because if there's different ways of calculating the secondary progressions through the houses, but basically the most common way is you move every day. Like when the sun's in the same place every day, the ascendant's moved about a degree. It's moved about a degree, right? Every day it's the sun's rising in a different place, basically. So right now his progressed ascendant is in Pisces, which is his hidden inner world, is now on the ascendant rising for everyone to see.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a discussion, I think, about Larry Geller. Yeah, he was into astrology. He was a Renaissance man. He was versed in a whole bunch of esoterics, traditions, and had a big toolbox of stuff he did with Elvis: numerology, astrology, I Ching, and so forth. But it was very broad and eclectic. So,
uncovering the hidden meaning of hair.
Yeah, there you go. Jason, the book will come out, and I have a long list. My Substack already has an article, but did a lot of supernatural things. So I think that's it. All right. Well, good to hear that the stars are aligned. And the last slide I see is Elvis 2.0, David Bowie.
Well, we kind of went to that earlier.
No, yeah, we did. Okay.
But maybe some way we'll get to deep diving David Bowie.
We will. I just finished the first draft. I'm sending it to some beta readers. So that's same vibe I get from Elvis with Bowie. So awesome. This has been really amazing. Thank you very much for all that work that you put. Scott Weiland. I don't even know what Scott Weiland believed in. I guess maybe I'll look. Hopefully, obviously, one of the great rock shamans in history, but maybe he'll be next. Sherilyn, any last questions or comments before we go on our own starry voyage, hopefully to bed? Or
I just think that's incredible, Noah, that last slide about, the timing of the book. That is just perfect. Miguel, it really is the zeitgeist moment where people, we need to understand how these folks like Jim Morrison and Elvis, and now you're going to do Bowie, they were bringing so much more than we even knew they were, and it's sort of this
we're
phenomenon where
opening portals.
yeah, absolutely. But this phenomena where they make the movie to shortcut the deeper questions, and people think, oh, I know about that. I saw the movie, and it's like, no, that was the Hollywood version, and it cut out, all the important stuff. And so many people, we've only seen the TV movie, or what used to be called in Gen X, the movie of the week.
Right.
On these figures, and they have, I can't tell you, I've talked to a few people now and about Morrison and Elvis and this thing, and they were just drug addicts. No, and I would rattle off a few facts, and they would say, what? Yeah, this was a huge, but I think, one of the cores of that, just those assumptions are that people don't understand that role of the shaman in general, that it's how challenging it is, that even in indigenous culture where it's accepted and promoted, they still don't live with the people, they live way out there,
edges. Yeah.
And so in a culture like our own, it's pretty monstrous what happens to these figures, and for them to survive at all and to bring forward any of these gifts is truly miraculous. And for them to leave legacies, there's these huge bodies of work that still move people. Again, like I was saying, like listening to those girls scream, you can't, that level, that emotion, that emoting, that channeling of that level of energy is really once in a generation. So thank you so much for this incredible book, Miguel, and Noah, for breaking that down for us. It really is. It was all there in his charts. That's incredible.
Yeah, written in the stars, man.
Well,
Thanks, Miguel.
Music is magic. It's a form of magic. It's a potent magic, but it's a shamanistic tradition that people aren't trained for. They don't know what they're harnessing. You can go into all the stories of people writing a song and it comes real, it becomes a predictive thing. And so you have these people you're harnessing this powerful energy. You have all these people resonating with it. And then you have the fame on top of that. They're not prepared for any of it. You can see why it's a self-destructive recipe.
That's really well said. You're right. This music does open portals or taps into the underworld. That's why I think that first wave of Little Richard and Johnny Cash and Elvis and,
Bo Diddley. We're going to have Bo Diddley.
Well, no, the guys in Sun Records I'm mentioning, and Jerry Lilo, they were trained pastors in a Pentecostal church. So they kind of were already Christian shamans, so they could handle, and they changed history. We've never seen such an explosion since, maybe later on the British invasion, but it took the world by storm. It changed history.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Thanks, Noah. It's been amazing.
Yeah. Well, we better wrap it up. Appreciate. I've got it on the show notes, but people go to facingnorthastro.blogspot.com and we will check out Noah's stuff. It's vast. It's amazing, but it's getting late. Sherilyn, as always, thanks for joining us. You rocked it.
Don't forget, you all have this mythology in your chart, right? Who's the hero you are? What mythology are you resonating? Come find out.
There you go. It's all there, written in the stars. Awesome. Well, thanks for everybody who showed up at the chat room. And yes, we will see you next time. Take care and reach for the stars, reach beyond the stars. Good night, everybody.